My parents demanded I sell my house to my sister or be disowned, but her CEO already knew my parents demanded I sell my house to my sister or be disowned. I refused, but her CEO already knew the truth and stood by my side. I am Emily, 32 years old, a successful financial analyst with a house I inherited from my grandmother 5 years ago. This house means everything to me. I have poured my heart savings and countless weekends into renovating it. Yesterday, I received a call from my parents with a shocking ultimatum: sell my beloved home to my pregnant sister Jessica at almost half its value or be disowned from the family. Trefore, I tell you the story that almost cost me everything. Let me know where you are watching from and hit that like button if you have ever faced injustice from your own family. My grandmother was my safe haven during childhood. When my parents were busy with work and social obligations, I would spend weekends at her charming 2-story house in what was then a quiet neighborhood, just outside the city centre. We would bake cookies in her vintage kitchen, tend to her beautiful garden, and she would tell me stories about her youth while we sat on the porch swing she and my grandfather had installed when they first bought the home in the 1970s. Emily, one day all of this will be yours, she would say, gesturing around the property. I see so much of myself in you. Promise me you will fill these rooms with as much love as I have. I always thought she was just being sentimental. I never actually believed she meant it literally until her lawyer contacted me after her funeral 5 years ago. At 27, I became the owner of a house in what had now become one of the most desirable neighborhoods in the city as development expanded and property values soared. The inheritance came with mixed emotions. I was devastated by her loss, but deeply touched by her faith in me. The house needed significant updates, though. The plumbing was original, the electrical system needed a complete overhaul, and the once charming wallpaper was peeling in every room. But beneath all that wear was solid craftsmanship and irreplaceable architectural details you just cannot find in modern construction. For the past 5 years, I have dedicated every spare dollar and weekend to restoring the house. I taught myself basic plumbing from YouTube videos. I spent months carefully stripping wallpaper and repainting each room. I refinished the original hardwood floors by hand, a process that took an entire summer of evenings after work and weekends of labor. When I needed professional help, I saved until I could afford the best contractors for critical structural work. Balancing my demanding job as a financial analyst with home renovation was exhausting. There were nights I fell asleep on the floor surrounded by paint supplies, too tired to even make it to bed. But with each improvement, the house felt more like the perfect blend of my grandmother's legacy and my own vision. It was becoming truly mine. My sister Jessica and I used to be close when we were younger. She is 3 years younger than me, and we shared a bedroom until I left for college. We would stay up late whispering about boys, our dreams, and sometimes our frustrations with our parents. But as we grew older, our paths diverged. I pursued finance, worked hard through college with scholarships and part-time jobs. Jessica took a different route, dropping in and out of college programs with our parents covering her tuition and expenses each time. 2 years ago, Jessica married Brian, the chief executive officer of a growing tech company. Since then, our relationship has become increasingly strained. While I was spending weekends installing kitchen cabinets and fixing leaky faucets, Jessica was posting photos from exotic vacations and fundraising galas. My parents beamed with pride at her marriage to such a successful man, often introducing him as our son-in-law, the CEO, at family gatherings. The disparity in how our parents treated us became increasingly obvious. When my car broke down last year, I dipped into my renovation budget to fix it. When Jessica wanted a new car, just because her current model was last year's style, our parents helped with the down payment. They explained it away as, "Jessica needs more support," or, "You have always been the independent one, Emily." I accepted this dynamic as normal until yesterday, when my phone rang during my lunch break at work. It was my mother, her voice unusually tense. "Emily, we need you to come over tonight. There is something important we need to discuss as a family. Dad and I insist you be here by 7. There was no room for negotiation in her tone. When I asked what this was about, she simply said, "This is not a phone conversation. Be here at 7 a.m. and hung up. The call left me unsettled for the rest of the workday. My parents had never been the type to call family meetings. Whatever this was, it felt serious, and the knot in my stomach tightened as I finished my workday and began the 30-minute drive to my childhood home. The tension was palpable as I pulled into my parents' driveway that evening. I noticed Jessica's luxury SUV already parked in the spot that had once been mine during high school. Next to it was a sleek black sedan I recognized as Brian's. So this meeting involved them too. I sat in my car for a moment, taking deep breaths to calm my nerves. Whatever this was about, I reminded myself that I was an adult with my own life, career, and home. I could handle whatever family drama awaited me inside. My mother opened the door before I could even ring the doorbell. "Finally," she said, checking her watch, though I was actually 5 minutes early. "Everyone is waiting in the living room." I followed her through the foyer, noting how the family photos lining the hallway increasingly featured Jessica, Brian, and my parents, with fewer and fewer, including me. It was a visual representation of how I had been gradually pushed to the periphery of family importance. In the living room, my father sat in his favorite recliner. Jessica and Brian occupied the sofa, all of them holding glasses of what appeared to be celebratory champagne. No one offered me a drink as I took the lone chair opposite them, immediately feeling like this was more of an intervention than a family meeting. "Emily, we have wonderful news." My mother began sitting next to Jessica and taking her hand. "Your sister is pregnant. You are going to be an aunt." Taishan. For a moment, genuine happiness broke through my apprehension. "That is amazing. Congratulations, Jess." I moved to hug my sister, but the stiff body language of everyone in the room stopped me. This announcement was clearly just the prelude to whatever the real purpose of this meeting was. Jessica rested her hand on her still flat stomach. "We are so excited. The baby is due in 7 months. Which brings us to why we asked you here tonight." Brian cleared his throat and leaned forward, assuming the tone he probably used in corporate boardrooms. "Emily, as you know, Jessica and I have been living in the downtown loft, which has been perfect for us as a couple. But with a baby on the way, we need more space, a yard, a family-friendly neighborhood." I nodded, still not seeing how this involved me. "We have been looking at houses, Jessica continued, "but the market is so competitive right now, and then Mom mentioned your house." My house. Something cold settled in my stomach. "Your grandmother's house would be perfect for us," Jessica said, her voice taking on a pleading quality. 4 bedrooms for our growing family, that beautiful backyard, the excellent school district. My father finally spoke up. "We think the most sensible solution is for you to sell the house to Jessica and Brian. You are single, no children. You do not need all that space." I was stunned into silence, trying to process what they were suggesting. Brian took my silence as an invitation to continue. "We are prepared to offer you $300,000 for it," he said, as if he was doing me a huge favor. I nearly choked. $300,000. The market value is at least $500,000, probably more, given the improvements I have made and how the neighborhood has developed. Brian waved his hand dismissively. "That is just inflated real estate agent talk. Besides, this is family. We are not talking about a regular market transaction." "Family is exactly why this conversation is inappropriate," I replied, finding my voice. "That house was specifically left to me by Grandma. I have put 5 years of work and most of my savings into renovating it. It is my home." My mother's face hardened. "Emily, do not be selfish. Your sister is starting a family. She needs that house more than you do. I am not being selfish by wanting to keep my own property," I countered, feeling my cheeks flush with anger and disbelief. Jessica began to cry, a tactic that had always worked well for her with our parents. "I just want to raise my baby in a nice home. Is that too much to ask? You could easily find an apartment." "An apartment? I own my home outright. Why would I sell it at a massive loss to move into an apartment?" Brian pulled out a folder and placed it on the coffee table. I took the liberty of drawing up some preliminary paperwork. We would like to close quickly before Jessica gets further along in her pregnancy. The stress is not good for the baby. I stared at the folder in disbelief. They had prepared documents before even speaking to me. The presumption was staggering. "I am not selling my house," I said firmly. "I am happy for you both about the baby, but you need to look elsewhere." My father stood up, his face flushing with anger. "Emily, you have always been difficult. Your sister has found a successful husband, is starting a family, continuing the family line. What have you contributed? You are just being stubborn out of jealousy." "Jealousy? Dad, this is my home we are talking about." My mother joined in. "Family comes first, Emily. Always. Your grandmother would be ashamed of your selfishness." That cut deep. Grandma left the house to me, not to the family pool of assets to be redistributed as you see fit. Jessica's tears flowed harder. "I just want my baby to have the same wonderful childhood memories in that house that you had." Do you hate me that much that you would deny your niece or nephew that opportunity? I looked around at their faces, all expecting me to capitulate to once again be the reasonable one, the one who sacrificed for Jessica's benefit. Decades of this dynamic flashed through my mind. My father delivered the final blow. Emily, this is not a request. Either you sell the house to your sister at the price we have discussed, or you are no longer part of this family. No holidays, no relationship with your niece or nephew. A complete break. The room spun around me. My own father was threatening to disown me over my refusal to be financially and emotionally exploited. I stood up on shaky legs. I need to leave, I managed to say, grabbing my purse. Think about what truly matters, Emily, my mother called after me as I headed for the door. Blood is thicker than water. I turned back one last time. Exactly. And Grandma was my blood too. She wanted me to have that house. I walked out the door with tears streaming down my face, feeling like the ground beneath my life had just collapsed. The 20-minute drive home passed in a blur. Tears streamed down my face, blurring the streetlights into smears of colour. I nearly missed my turn twice, my mind replaying the ambush I had just experienced. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the ignition. I sat in the car, staring at my house, my grandmother's house, seeing it through new eyes. The freshly painted porch where I had spent countless evenings, with a glass of wine and a good book. The flower beds I had restored according to my grandmother's original garden plans, found tucked away in her attic. The stained glass window above the front door that I had carefully restored piece by piece. This was not just a piece of real estate. It was my sanctuary, the physical manifestation of both my grandmother's love and my own resilience. Once inside, I collapsed onto my couch, the one furniture splurge I had allowed myself after completing the living room renovation. My phone buzzed incessantly, notifications from my parents and Jessica, but I could not bear to read them yet. Instead, I called the one person I knew would understand. Sarah answered on the second ring. Hey, what is up? It is kind of late for you to call on a work night. They want to take my house, I blurted out, fresh tears spilling over. What who does slow down, Emily? I took a deep breath and recounted the entire surreal family meeting, including the lowball offer and the ultimate threat of being disowned. That is insane, Sarah said when I finished. They cannot force you to sell your property. It is legally yours. I know that logically, but you did not see them, Sarah. They were so certain I would give in like I always have. Dad actually threatened to cut me off from the family entirely. Then maybe it is time to cut the cord, Sarah said firmly. This is financial and emotional blackmail, Emily. You need to talk to a lawyer. A lawyer? It is a family matter. No, it is a legal matter involving your rightful property. And from what you have told me about Brian, I would not put it past him to try some shady tactics. You need to protect yourself. The thought had not occurred to me that Brian might attempt something underhanded, but Sarah's words sparked a new worry. He had not built his reputation as a ruthless CEO for nothing. I have a friend from college who specializes in real estate law, Sarah continued. His name is Michael Torres. I will text you his contact information. Promise me you will call him first thing tomorrow. I promise, I said, the lawyer's logical approach already making me feel more grounded. And Emily, stay strong. That house is yours. Your grandmother wanted you to have it, not Jessica, not your parents, and certainly not Brian. After we hung up, I finally worked up the courage to check my messages. 5 missed calls from my mother, 3 from Jessica, and multiple texts, each more manipulative than the last. Mum, Emily, you embarrassed us all with your childish behaviour. Call immediately. Jessica, how could you ruin what should have been a happy family announcement? This stress is not good for the baby, Mum. Your father is extremely disappointed. This attitude of yours needs to stop now. Jessica, I have always looked up to you. I cannot believe you would deny my child a proper home out of spite. Dad, this discussion is not over. Call your mother. I turned off my phone, unable to stomach any more guilt-tripping. That night, I barely slept, tossing and turning as I imagined being completely cut off from my family. As dysfunctional as our relationships were, could I really face holidays alone? Never meeting my niece or nephew, was my house, even with all its sentimental value, worth losing my family over? By morning, exhaustion had given way to resolve. I called Michael Torres before even making coffee. Sarah filled me in on the basics, he said after I introduced myself. Can you come to my office this afternoon? This situation requires immediate attention. I rearranged my work schedule and met with Michael at 2 that afternoon. His office was warm and reassuring, with diplomas and certifications covering one wall and family photos on his desk. He listened attentively as I provided more details about the house, the inheritance, and my family's ultimatum. "First, let me assure you that your legal position is secure," Michael said when I finished. "The house is yours, deeded to you specifically by your grandmother. No one can force you to sell it regardless of family pressure." His words lifted a weight from my shoulders. "However," he continued, "I am concerned about potential harassment or attempts to undermine your ownership. Let me run a title check to make sure nothing unusual has happened recently." While he worked on his computer, I asked, "Do you think they would really try something like that?" Michael looked up from his screen. "In my experience, when large sums of money and property are involved, people can behave in ways you would never expect, even family. It is better to be cautious." His expression changed as he studied his monitor. "That is interesting. There have been several inquiries about your property in the past 3 weeks." "Inquiries from whom?" "The system does not show specifics, but someone has been researching the title history and tax records for your address quite thoroughly. Given the timing and what you have told me, I suspect your brother-in-law may have been planning this approach for some time." The realization that this had been a coordinated plan, not a spontaneous request due to Jessica's pregnancy, felt like another betrayal. As I left Michael's office with his assurance that he would monitor my property records, my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. "Family takes care of family. Do the right thing and sell the house. You are being watched." A cold shiver ran down my spine. I showed the message to Michael, who was walking me to the door. "Save that," he said grimly. "Document everything. If the threats continue, we may need to involve the police." Over the next few days, my work life began to suffer as well. Colleagues who had previously been friendly became distant. My supervisor called me into her office to discuss concerns about my focus and attitude, though she could not provide specific examples when I pressed her. It was only when I overheard 2 co-workers in the break room that I understood what was happening. "I heard she refused to help her own sister who is pregnant," one whispered. "Apparently she is holding on to this huge house out of pure selfishness, while her sister has nowhere to live," the other replied. I froze in the doorway, realizing that someone, likely my family, had been spreading their version of events throughout my social and professional circles. I was being painted as the villain, the selfish spinster, denying a home to an expectant mother. The character assassination was both painful and infuriating. That evening, I received a call from my cousin Alison, who had always been more like a sister to me than Jessica. "Emily, what is going on?" Aunt Kathy called my mum, saying you are refusing to help Jessica and the baby, that you might be cut off from the family. "That does not sound like you at all." I explained the true situation, including the lowball offer and ultimatum. "That is absolutely ridiculous," Alison said indignantly. "Aunt Kathy made it sound like you were denying them a place to live, not refusing to sell your own home at a huge loss. And honestly, with Brian's salary, they could easily afford a house at market value." Her support was a tiny island of validation in a sea of manipulation, but it was enough to help me stay resolute as the pressure continued to build. 2 weeks passed, and the pressure from my family intensified in ways I never imagined possible. It seemed like every day brought a new form of emotional leverage. Extended family members I rarely spoke with suddenly called to check in, only to launch into speeches about the importance of family and how I should do the right thing for Jessica and her baby. Even my elderly Aunt Mildred, who lived across the country and had not visited in years, somehow had gotten wind of the situation and left a tearful voicemail about family unity. My parents employed a rotating strategy. My mother sent daily texts oscillating between guilt trips, "I did not raise you to be so selfish," and dramatic health concerns. "Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of this stress." My father took a different approach with stern messages about my obligations and family duty, occasionally slipping in mentions of changing their will if I continued this rebellion. Jessica's tactics were perhaps the most emotionally manipulative. She sent me ultrasound pictures with captions like, "Your niece or nephew who might never know their aunt." She posted vague social media updates about toxic people and family heartbreak during what should be the happiest time of my life. Careful never to name me directly, but ensuring mutual acquaintances would know exactly who she was referring to. The text messages from unknown numbers continued becoming increasingly unsettling. "That house won't feel so comfortable when you're all alone in it," read one. Another said, "Smart career women should know when to make business decisions, not emotional ones." I changed my phone number, increased my home security by installing cameras, and followed Michael's advice to document everything. Still, the isolation was taking its toll. I found myself jumping at sudden noises and checking the locks multiple times before bed. Then came the dinner invitation. My mother called from a new number I had not yet blocked. "We want to resolve this situation as a family," she said, her voice softer than it had been in weeks. "Your father and I are hosting dinner tomorrow night. Jessica and Brian will be there. We all agree that emotions have run too high and we need to find a compromise." Every instinct told me this was another ambush, but a small part of me, the part that desperately wanted my family back, convinced me to agree. 7 o'clock, my mother said. "And Emily, please come with an open heart." I arrived at my parents' house the following evening with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. The scene was eerily similar to our previous meeting, except this time, the atmosphere seemed deliberately calibrated to appear warm and conciliatory. My mother had prepared my favorite meal from childhood lasagna with garlic bread. Family photos that included me had mysteriously reappeared on the walls. Jessica greeted me with a hug that felt rehearsed. "We are so glad you came," my father said, sounding genuinely pleased. "Families should work through difficulties together." The first half hour was surprisingly pleasant as we ate and engaged in careful small talk, avoiding the elephant in the room. I allowed myself to hope that perhaps they had reconsidered, that they had realized the unfairness of their demand. That hope evaporated as soon as dinner ended and Brian cleared his throat. "Emily, we have given this situation a lot of thought," he began, his CEO voice in full effect. "We understand that you have put work into the house and we want to be fair." He slid a folder across the table, identical to the one from our previous meeting. "We have revised our offer to $350,000. That is a $50,000 increase, which we feel more than compensates for any improvements you have made." My mouth fell open. After all the drama, the tears, the threats, their idea of compromise was a mere $50,000 increase on an offer still far below market value. "We have also added a clause allowing you to stay in the house for up to 60 days after closing rent-free to give you time to find a new place," Jessica added, as if this was an incredible act of generosity. I looked around the table at their expectant faces. They truly believed I would accept this. "This is not a compromise," I said quietly. "This is the same demand with slightly better wrapping paper." "Emily," my mother warned, "do not start this again." "Start what? Defending my right to my own property? The house is worth at least $500,000. You are still asking me to gift Jessica and Brian $150,000 minimum." Brian leaned forward. "What you are failing to understand is that we have inside information that makes this offer more than fair." "What inside information?" "My company is expanding. We are opening a new headquarters just 3 miles from your neighborhood. Once that announcement goes public next month, property values in the area will increase substantially. We are actually offering you a fair price based on current market conditions." I stared at him, pieces suddenly clicking into place. "So this is not about Jessica and the baby needing a family home. This is about you wanting to buy property in an area you know will appreciate significantly using family connections to get it below market value." Jessica looked confused, glancing at Brian. "What? No, that is not it at all. We need the space for the baby." Brian shot her a warning look. "The business aspect is secondary. Family comes first, of course." "If family comes first," I countered, "then why not offer me the fair future value you just mentioned? Why should I lose out on that appreciation instead of you?" My father slammed his hand on the table. "Enough, Emily, you are being unreasonable. The paperwork is ready. Either you sign it tonight or our earlier terms stand. You will no longer be welcome in this family." I looked at my mother, hoping for some support, but her eyes were hard. "Your father and I are united on this. Make your choice." I stood up slowly. I already made my choice when I refused to be bullied out of my home. Nothing has changed. "Everything has changed," my father said coldly. "As of this moment, I have no elder daughter. Leave your key to this house on the table on your way out." I fumbled in my purse for my keychain, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall in front of them. I removed the key to my childhood home and placed it on the table. "Jessica," I said, looking at my sister, "I hope one day you realize what is happening here. I love you, and I would have welcomed your child into my life with open arms. This did not have to be an ultimatum. Jessica would not meet my eyes." Brian placed a proprietary hand on her shoulder and she leaned into him, her loyalty clear. I walked out of my parents' house, for what I believed might be the last time, feeling completely alone, but oddly liberated. The family that had been revealed through this conflict was not one I recognized anymore, and perhaps not one worth preserving at the cost of my dignity and financial security. The following Monday, everything fell apart at work. I was called into my supervisor Diana's office first thing in the morning. Her expression was grave as I took a seat across from her desk. "Emily, we have received a serious complaint about your professional conduct," she began, not quite meeting my eyes. "From whom?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "From Brian Lawson at Tech Future Industries. He states that you have been unprofessional in your communications with his company and have created a hostile environment that is making it difficult for our firms to maintain a productive business relationship." Tech Future Industries was indeed one of our larger clients, though I had minimal direct contact with them in my role. The connection was tenuous at best, but apparently enough for Brian to exploit. "That is completely false," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "I have had almost no direct interaction with Tech Future in my professional capacity. This is a personal matter being incorrectly framed as a professional one." Diana looked uncomfortable. "He was quite specific, Emily. He mentioned aggressive emails and inappropriate comments about their business practices." "I would like to see these alleged emails," I said firmly, "because they do not exist." Unfortunately, he did not provide copies citing confidentiality concerns. But given Tech Future's importance to our firm, we have to take these allegations seriously. For now, I am placing you on probation. Any client work will need to be reviewed by another team member before it goes out. The humiliation burned through me. Not only was my family trying to bully me out of my home, but now Brian was attacking my professional reputation as well. The fact that my company would place me on probation without even seeing evidence of my supposed misconduct made it even worse. As I left Diana's office, I noticed the stares and whispers from colleagues. Word had clearly spread fast. People I had collaborated with for years now viewed me with suspicion or avoided eye contact entirely. The isolation I had been feeling at home now extended to my workplace as well. During lunch, I sat alone scrolling through my email archives for any communication I might have had with Tech Future. As I suspected, there was almost nothing, and certainly nothing that could be construed as unprofessional. But how could I prove the negative? How could I demonstrate that Brian's claims were fabricated? As I was packing up to leave that evening, an unfamiliar woman approached my desk. She appeared to be in her mid-30s, professionally dressed, with a cautious expression. "Are you Emily?" she asked quietly, glancing around to ensure no one was within earshot. "Yes," I replied warily, unsure what new accusation might be coming my way. "My name is Laura Bennett. I used to work as Brian Lawson's executive assistant at Tech Future." She handed me her business card, which confirmed her previous position. "Can we talk somewhere private, not here?" It was so cheap. Intrigued and desperate for any potential ally, I suggested a coffee shop a few blocks away, one not frequented by my colleagues. 20 minutes later, we sat in a corner booth, Laura nervously turning her coffee cup in her hands. "I left Tech Future 6 months ago," she began. "Officially, I resigned to pursue other opportunities. The truth is, I could not continue to work for Brian. What he is doing to you, he has done to others." "What do you mean?" Laura took a deep breath. "Brian has a pattern of using personal connections for business gain. He identifies properties or assets he wants, then manipulates relationships to acquire them below market value. I witnessed him do this to his former brother-in-law, a business partner, and even a distant cousin. But how do you know about my situation?" I asked, still cautious. "The administrative team talks. His current assistant is an old friend. She mentioned that Brian was working on acquiring a property through family channels and was encountering resistance. When she described the situation, it sounded so familiar that I started paying attention. Then I saw your name mentioned in an email she forwarded to me asking if I remembered you from any previous dealings." Laura pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of an email where Brian had written to someone. "Emily remains obstinate. Time to escalate to her workplace. Prepare the complaint letter we discussed." My hands shook as I read the evidence of Brian's deliberate sabotage of my career. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "You are risking a lot." Laura's expression hardened. "Because what he did to those other people was wrong, and what he is doing to you is wrong." I stayed silent before out of fear, but I cannot do that anymore. Brian is not just manipulative, he is dishonest in his business practices as well. The company expansion he is likely using as leverage. It is not even confirmed yet. The board is still debating the location. She provided me with copies of several emails and documents that proved not only Brian's pattern of behavior, but also the falsehood of his claims about the company expansion. It was the evidence I desperately needed. I want to help you confront him, Laura said. He needs to be stopped. With Laura's assistance, I devised a plan. I would invite Brian to meet me, ostensibly to discuss the house situation reasonably. Laura helped me craft the message in a way she knew would appeal to Brian's ego, suggesting I had reconsidered after the workplace consequences became clear. Brian responded quickly, agreeing to meet me the following afternoon at a coffee shop near his office. I am glad you are finally being sensible, he wrote, his condescension evident even in text form. What he did not know was that James Wilson, the actual CEO of Tech Future, and Brian's direct superior would be sitting at the next table, thanks to an anonymous tip about a vice president potentially engaging in unethical business practices using company information. The coffee shop I chose for our meeting was upscale but public, with small, well-spaced tables that offered the illusion of privacy while ensuring witnesses would be present. I arrived 20 minutes early, my heart pounding so hard I feared it might be audible. Laura had helped me prepare a script and gather all my evidence, but facing Brian directly after everything he had done felt overwhelming. James Wilson, Tech Future's CEO, arrived shortly after me, nodding discreetly as he took a seat at a table positioned within earshot, but not directly in Brian's line of sight. He was older than I expected, perhaps in his mid-50s, with silver temples and the confident posture of someone accustomed to command. Laura had assured me that James was known for his ethical leadership and would not tolerate Brian's behavior if presented with clear evidence. At precisely 3 o'clock, Brian strode in wearing an expensive suit and the smug expression of someone who believed he had already won. He spotted me and approached, not bothering to order a drink first. "Emily," he said, taking the seat across from me, "I am glad you have come to your senses." I had to suppress a wave of anger at his presumption. "I wanted to discuss the situation in a neutral setting," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Recent events have given me a lot to think about." Brian leaned back, a satisfied smile playing at his lips. "I understand completely. The workplace complications must have been a wake-up call. Family disputes should remain private, not spill over into one's career." The irony of this statement, given that he was the one who had deliberately created those workplace complications, was staggering. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stick to the plan. "Before we discuss the house further, I would like some clarification," I said, opening a folder I had brought with me. "You mentioned that Tech Future is definitely opening a headquarters near my neighborhood, which will increase property values." "That is correct," Brian replied smoothly. "The announcement will be made public next month. By selling now, you will miss out on the appreciation, which is why our offer is more than fair." I nodded as if considering this. "That is interesting because I have information suggesting the board has not yet approved this expansion. In fact, they are still considering 3 possible locations." Brian's confident expression faltered slightly. "Your information is outdated. The decision has been made internally." "Is that so?" I slid a document across the table, a copy of board meeting minutes from the previous week that Laura had provided. Because according to this, the board explicitly stated that no final decision would be made until the fiscal quarter ends. Brian glanced at the document, his face darkening. "Where did you get this? This is confidential company information." "That is not important. What matters is that you lied to me, to Jessica, and to my parents about information you were using to pressure me into selling my home below market value." "This is absurd," Brian scoffed, but I could see a flicker of worry in his eyes. "You are manufacturing evidence to justify your selfishness." I pulled out my phone. "I have also been recording this conversation since you sat down," I said. Though this was a bluff. "So I now have you on record admitting the expansion was certain when your own company documents contradict that claim." "You cannot record me without my consent," Brian hissed, reaching for my phone. I pulled it away. "Actually, in this state, single-party consent is perfectly legal for recordings." Brian's face contorted with anger. "This is ridiculous. I came here to offer you one last chance to do the right thing for your family, and you ambush me with stolen documents and illegal recordings." "Stolen documents?" I raised my eyebrows. "So you admit they are authentic?" Brian realized his mistake too late. He stood abruptly, looming over me in an obvious attempt at intimidation. "You have no idea who you are dealing with. I can make your life very difficult, Emily. The complaint to your employer was just the beginning. I have connections throughout this city. Are you threatening me, Brian? I asked, raising my voice slightly to ensure it carried. I am informing you of reality, he snapped. Your career, your reputation, even that precious house of yours, none of it is secure if you make an enemy of me. That is fascinating, came a new voice from behind Brian. Please tell me more about how you use your position at my company to conduct personal vendettas, Brian. Brian froze, then slowly turned to face James Wilson, who had risen from his table and now stood just a few feet away. James, Brian stammered, his confident demeanor evaporating instantly. This is not what it sounds like. This is a personal family matter. Is it? James asked, his tone deceptively mild. Because it sounds very much like you are using confidential company information for personal gain, making false claims about board decisions, and threatening this young woman with professional consequences if she does not sell you her property at below market value. None of that strikes me as a personal family matter. Brian's face had gone pale. I can explain everything. I sincerely hope so, James replied. Because from where I stand, this conversation, combined with the documentation that was anonymously delivered to my office yesterday, suggests a pattern of highly unethical behavior that violates multiple company policies and possibly several laws. Documentation? What documentation? Brian looked genuinely alarmed now. Emails, meeting notes, complaints from former associates, James said, his expression hardening. Evidence suggesting this is not the first time you have used your position at Tech Future for personal enrichment or to settle personal scores. Brian shot me a venomous glare. She orchestrated this. This is a setup. James shook his head. Actually, I was already investigating these allegations before today. This meeting simply provided confirmation of what I suspected. He turned to me. Ms. Bennett, I believe I apologize for any professional damage Brian's actions may have caused you. I will personally contact your employer to clarify that any complaints were unfounded and inappropriately leveraged. I was momentarily confused by his use of Laura's surname, then realized he was protecting my identity. I nodded gratefully. Brian, we will continue this conversation at the office, James continued. I expect you there in 30 minutes. Do not make any stops along the way, and do not contact anyone from the company before we speak. Brian looked like he might argue, but then his shoulders slumped in defeat. Without another word to either of us, he turned and left the coffee shop, the bell above the door jangling cheerfully in contrast to the tense atmosphere he left behind. James turned to me with a sympathetic expression. I truly am sorry about this. Brian's behavior reflects poorly on our company, and I assure you it will be addressed appropriately. Thank you, I said, still processing the dramatic turn of events. I should also clarify that while no final decision has been made about our expansion, your neighborhood is indeed one of the locations under serious consideration. If you are concerned about property values, I would suggest holding on to your home. It could indeed appreciate significantly in the near future. He handed me his business card. If you experience any further issues related to this situation, please contact me directly. And if you ever decide on a career change, Tech Future could use more people with your integrity and resourcefulness. As James left, I sat in stunned silence, the business card in my trembling hands, a tangible reminder that I had just won a battle I had feared was unwinnable. Now I just had to figure out how to break the news to Jessica and my parents that their golden son-in-law was not who they thought he was. The aftermath unfolded in ways I could never have predicted. The day after my confrontation with Brian, I received a call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered. Emily, it is Jessica. Her voice sounded small, nothing like the entitled tone she had used in recent weeks. Jessica, I acknowledged, unsure what to expect. Can we meet somewhere? Just the two of us. I need to talk to you. We arranged to meet at a small park near my house, Neutral Territory, where we had played as children. When I arrived, Jessica was already there, sitting on a bench, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. She looked up as I approached, and I was struck by how vulnerable she appeared without Brian's presence bolstering her confidence. Brian has been suspended from his job, she said without preamble. James Wilson called me personally to explain why. I sat beside her, maintaining some distance. I am sorry you had to find out this way. Are you? She asked, but there was no bite to her words, just weariness. Because part of me thinks you orchestrated the whole thing to get back at us. I did not orchestrate anything, Jessica. Brian's actions caught up with him. I just refused to be his victim. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the children playing on the swings nearby. James told me everything about the fake expansion plans, about how Brian has done this before, about the complaint he made to your workplace. She turned to look at me directly. Is it true? All of it? Yes, I said simply. Jessica covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. I feel so stupid, so completely, utterly stupid. He convinced me we needed your house specifically because it would be perfect for our family. But it was all about property values and investment potential. He was using our baby, using me to manipulate you. I hesitated, then placed a hand on her shoulder. You are not stupid, Jess. You trusted your husband. That is what spouses are supposed to do. But I chose him over my own sister. I let Mum and Dad disown you. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I do not know how you can even stand to look at me right now. The anger I had been holding on to began to dissolve at the sight of her genuine remorse. Because you are my sister, and despite everything, I love you. Jessica broke down completely then, and I found myself holding her while she sobbed her pregnancy hormones, likely intensifying her emotional response. When she finally calmed, she wiped her eyes and looked at me with determination. I need to fix this. Starting with Mom and Dad, we drove to our parents' house together, Jessica explaining on the way that she had not told them about Brian's suspension yet. I wanted to talk to you first to understand everything before I confronted them. My parents were surprised to see us both at their door, especially together. My mother's expression cycled rapidly from shock to wariness to confusion. What is going on, Jessica? Why are you crying? She asked as we entered the living room, the same space where they had delivered their ultimatum just weeks before. You both need to sit down, Jessica said with unexpected authority. There is something you need to know about Brian and about the house situation. Over the next hour, Jessica explained everything she had learned from James Wilson. My parents listened in stunned silence as their perfect son-in-law was revealed to be a manipulative opportunist who had used their family loyalty as a weapon in his scheme to acquire valuable property. This cannot be true, my father said weakly when Jessica finished. Brian is a respected businessman. It is true, Dad, Jessica insisted. James Wilson confirmed everything. Brian has been suspended pending an investigation, and they are reviewing all his business dealings for the past 3 years. My mother turned to me, her face ashen. Emily, we had no idea. We thought... She trailed off, unable to complete the sentence. You thought I was being selfish and difficult, I finished for her. You chose to believe that about me rather than question Brian's motives. We were wrong. My father admitted the words clearly difficult for him. Terribly wrong. The admission, while gratifying, did not immediately heal the deep wound their betrayal had created. You disowned me, Dad. You chose Brian's side without ever considering that I might have legitimate reasons for wanting to keep my home. I know, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I do not expect you to forgive us right away, but we would like the chance to make it right. Jessica reached for my hand. We all would. The path to reconciliation was not smooth or quick. In the days that followed, more details emerged about Brian's professional misconduct. The board at Tech Future voted unanimously to terminate his employment after discovering he had attempted similar manipulations with other property owners in areas the company was considering for expansion. Jessica moved back to our parents' house temporarily while she figured out her next steps. The pregnancy was real, and despite everything, she wanted to keep the baby. This child deserves better than what Brian and I had planned, she told me. A home built on lies and manipulation would never have been truly happy. 2 weeks after our confrontation at the coffee shop, James Wilson contacted me again. I hope you do not mind the call, but I wanted to update you personally. The investigation into Brian's activities has concluded, and the board has decided to proceed with our expansion plans in your area after all. Thank you for letting me know, I said, surprised by his continued personal involvement. There is something else, James continued. We have an opening in our financial analysis department. Your background and qualifications would be an excellent fit. Would you be interested in discussing the opportunity? I was stunned. You are offering me a job. I am offering you an interview, James clarified with a chuckle. But yes, I was very impressed with how you handled the situation with Brian. That kind of integrity and resourcefulness is rare and valuable. The interview led to a job offer with a substantial increase in salary and responsibilities. My former employer, after receiving a formal apology from Tech Future for Brian's false complaints, tried to convince me to stay, but the damage to our relationship was too severe to repair. As for my house, I kept it, of course. The property values did indeed rise significantly when Tech Future announced their expansion, vindicating my decision to stand firm against the pressure to sell. My relationship with my family entered a healing phase. My parents, humbled by their mistake, and the realization of how easily they had been manipulated, approached our reconciliation with genuine remorse. They respected the boundaries I established, understanding that trust would need to be rebuilt gradually. Jessica and I grew closer than we had been in years. After her divorce from Brian was finalized, she found a modest but comfortable apartment nearby and focused on preparing for single motherhood. I helped her decorate the nursery and attended birthing classes as her support person. When her daughter Lily was born 6 months later, I was in the delivery room holding Jessica's hand through every contraction. The first time I held my niece, looking into her tiny face that somehow combined the best features of our family while showing no trace of Brian, I knew that all the pain had been worth it. "She is going to grow up surrounded by strong women who know their worth," Jessica said as she watched me rock Lily to sleep. "I want her to be just like her Aunt Emily." The healing process took time, and there were still difficult moments. Holidays could be awkward, old patterns occasionally resurfaced, and I sometimes caught myself waiting for the other shoe to drop. But with each passing month, the wounds scarred over and new, healthier relationships formed in place of the dysfunctional ones we had accepted for so long. As for James, our professional relationship evolved into friendship and eventually something more. His ethical leadership style and genuine respect for boundaries were a welcome change from the manipulation I had grown accustomed to in relationships. We took things slowly, both of us cautious after our respective experiences with betrayal, but the foundation was solid. My grandmother's house continued to be my sanctuary, but now it was filled with new memories, Jessica and Lily visiting for Sunday dinners, my parents helping with the garden, my grandmother had loved friends gathering on the porch for summer evenings. What had almost been taken from me had become more precious, a symbol of standing my ground when it mattered most. Looking back now, I realized that the ultimatum my parents delivered that night was actually a gift in disguise. It forced me to define my boundaries, to recognize my own worth, and to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation or manipulation. Sometimes the family we choose, the one we build through honesty and respect, is stronger than the one we are born into. Today, as I sit on my grandmother's porch swing, watching Lily chase butterflies in the garden, I am filled with gratitude for the difficult path that led me here. Standing up for yourself is never easy, especially against those you love, but sometimes it is the only way to create the life and the relationships you truly deserve. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure? What boundaries have you had to set to protect yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below, and do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, your worth is not determined by others' expectations of you, but by your own courage to honor what matters most.